Hi, everybody. Hi, Lucia. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. Really excited to be here and looking forward to the session and all the interesting questions that are going to come up. How are you?
I'm great, and I'm also very excited about this webinar. And I'm glad that everybody joined us on this webinar about how to fortify your UA strategy with creatives testing. So without further ado, let's move on to our presentation. So here's our agenda. We're going to cover all these questions, and then we're going to have a Q&A at the end of the webinar. Let's begin with the importance of creatives testing. I'm going to turn off my mic so we don't have any problems with the sound.
Thank you. And yeah, let's dive right in. So I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, know that with the increasing automation happening on all the major platforms like Facebook and Google, creatives are becoming more and more important in order to be able to sufficiently and sustainably scale your UA activities. So in today's world, UA manager really has only two levers left that they can pull in order to move the needle and really optimize their campaign's performance. On one hand side is the data side of things, particularly the optimization events. So selecting the right conversion event that your campaigns are optimizing towards is really something that, of course, can make a huge difference and make or break a campaign. On the other hand, we have creatives, which is what we are talking about today. And creatives are really becoming sort of the targeting lever. So to say, with UA manager's job is no longer calculating the perfect bid and micro-segmenting the audiences to deliver the perfect personalized experience to each various segment. Nowadays, this is really driven by the creatives themselves, as less and less features and less data is available to us from the platforms themselves. We have also prepared a couple of examples before we dive into the best practices and some tips and tricks for you, just to illustrate how much can the right creative really make a difference, even on your business economics overall. So here on the first example, as I'm guessing you guessed, is anonymized data sample. So this was a gaming app client who was looking to find out what brand or a famous character their brand would benefit the most from partnering with in order to further drive scale and performance improvement. So important to note here is that we used the very same concept, the same USP, targeting the same audience across all four of these. And the only change that happened was the character implemented within the concept. And as you can see, the results vary really, really greatly. So our winning creative is performing the best in terms of click-through rate, but is not the top winner in the conversion rate, which is something I like to call or refer to as the UA paradox. So almost never you will see that the ad that is performing the best amongst the top funnel metrics, such as engagement and click-through rate, will not be the same further down on the bottom of the funnel. And this is also illustrated here by the example of the character D, which is the worst performing on top funnel metric, the click-through rate, but actually is the very top performer in conversion rate. This is why it's really important that you consider the full funnel when you are testing your creatives. Moving into the second example, which is from the health and fitness space. This is an app maybe some of you are familiar with, called Fortify, and basically provides personalized workouts. And what we have done with Fortify is we have extensively been testing on Facebook their creatives. The first interesting thing you can probably notice already is that all four of these are originating from the same concept. So these are just different executions and variations of the same core concept, which, as you can see, is showing exercises and the daily routine that the app recommends to bring the desired results. But the different executions are, let's say, dark background versus light, male versus female model, and of course, format, video versus image, which is my second point I would like to make here. That what is interesting here is that 3 out of 4 creatives that were the most successful ones able to scale are actually static images. This goes pretty much against the common belief that videos are the best or the only way even to go. I have seen many apps kind of, producing only videos because that is the recommended thing to do. So I would like to reinforce here that it is really important for you to test things out for yourself, because even formats are really individual, and as in this case, you can see here what resonates best with this particular audience are actually static images, which translate the message instantly. And you can see that the difference really is huge in terms of the ROAS as well. And with that being said, I will hand over to Maria for some more examples.
Yeah, first I wanted to add a few words about the videos. You see, the situation with videos is in general a bit complex. Like according to mobile marketing expert Johannes von Cremon, they can be a huge advantage because of the autoplay and the awareness they create, but highly depend on the category of the app. For example, in a very competitive environment with strong brands, a video can make a big difference. While more innovative and yet not so well-known app concepts might be better off with static screenshots, which convey the core value and message quicker than the video. As for the success stories, I have a few for you. So first one of our clients, game publisher ZMAD, managed to achieve an impressive 36% conversion uplift by localizing their App Store screenshots for their game Bubble Birds 4. They localized it for Japanese audience. So another example is Lepke, mobile growth company. They got conversion rate increase of 45.8%. With A/B testing their game screenshots. They tested render-based against gameplay styles and introduced simplified CTAs and brighter colors, which got them the CVR uplift. So another client of ours, App Family Kids, Android puzzle game publisher, doubled app downloads by changing app icon for their jigsaw puzzle game. Well, let's talk about how to test. I'm gonna turn my mic off again. Just a second.
Thanks for that, Maria. So yes, we'll cover some, so to say, golden rules for you. I personally have prepared 6 from the UA's point of view, and I truly believe that all of these are applicable no matter what vertical industry you're in or even what team size you have. So all of you should be able to benefit from these. So without further ado, we'll do a little deep dive into each one of them to walk you through the details of it. The first one being integrating creative testing into an agile process, and so to say, closing the loop. It's really important to know that creative testing is a fluid discipline, and it lays on the intersection of UA and creative teams because it requires lots of different skills, right? Like you must be able to read and translate the data, but then you also need someone creative to come up with concepts and execute them. And this is why it's really important that it is in constant evolution, because all your tests will have some results that will then feed your further assumptions and hypotheses. So it really is a never-ending loop that should always be running and feeding the performance machine. And I would really recommend, for example, running a weekly or at least bi-weekly cadence with your creative testing. With that being said, the following rule is all about the creative concepts. And rule of thumb, never dive straight into doing 20, 30 crazy iterations of small tweaks, changing background colors. It's really important that you focus on first proving the concept itself. With that being said, I do recommend doing 2 to 3 major iterations. What I mean by major iterations, so don't just tweak small things like the copy overlay, but do big changes that can really drive incremental impact, such as you're doing maybe black and white versus color, maybe animated versus real live footage, things like this. Why? Because I'm sure you might have noticed it's oftentimes the little things that really make the difference, and you really want to avoid losing out on a concept that could have been a winner was it just executed a little differently, but you also don't want to go too crazy and just waste a ton of budget on testing huge amounts of variables from the get-go. So with that being said, on the next slide, I have a little visualization of what so imagine this would be your weekly iteration process. If you don't know where to start, this cadence, I would say, is a perfect starting point. 5 concepts a week should be manageable. And then if you imagine that you do 2 to 3 iterations of each of these major concepts, you will end up with 20 original creatives that you can test on a weekly basis. What is highlighted here is, let's assume we've run our test of these 5 concepts and we found that concept number 4 is our winning concept. So what you want to do then is sit down and analyze and identify what are the key variables that are making this concept successful. And then you can extract these variables. And even, again, you can plug in automation into this process if you have the technology. Like, for example, here at AppAgent, we have a script that helps us tag different variables in a sheet. And then we are able to quickly and efficiently produce huge amounts of iterations of a single concept. As you can see on the next slide, I have an example of various pack shots that we did for a game called Empires and Puzzles. So these are all pack shots of the same video concept, because from all the testing we've done, we actually found out that, surprisingly, this was the most influential element of the whole creative. So as you can see, we quickly created very, very different looks just by changing the background, playing with the positioning a little bit, replacing the characters. So again, you can do really, really awesome things, and you don't have to feel like you are stuck once you created a concept, because you can always do many different variations just if you get a little bit creative. So next point, perhaps the biggest one actually to think about, is always reaching statistical significance. Without reaching statistical significance, you cannot really reliably say whether something is a winning variant or concept or ad or losing. So what we found from our own testing, as long as you're running campaign or the ad optimizing towards mobile app installs, reaching roughly around 300 installs should always ensure that you have reached over 90% significance, which in most cases will be enough to safely determine whether the particular ad is a winner or a loser. That being said, you should always retest whatever you find winning in a second stage, so to say, optimizing, of course, for return on investment. So whether you do app event optimization or value optimization, in this phase, how much volume you need to reach statistical significance will really just vary greatly, because that depends on what type of app you have, what type of monetization, whether it's in-app purchases versus subscriptions, how much time you need for conversions. So these are all influencing factors. That's why there is no one size fits all, let's say, for this particular one. The next one, perhaps the trickiest one, is all about eliminating bias. While it may not be possible to completely eliminate bias that you might encounter during your testing journey, there are some things that you can do to minimize them. And actually, these are super applicable for a majority of you, since Facebook seems to be the major channel, the most important one, as tends to be the case. Where it's really easily done. So first of all, I would always recommend you to do A/B tests manually and refrain from using the built-in features, just because they don't ensure that you will always get equal delivery. So how you can ensure that you do get equal delivery for all your assets is simply put one ad per ad set, using, of course, ad set budget. Now, having a separate account for testing is ideal, because then you don't pollute your, let's say, scaling campaigns with lots of data from failed tests, let's say, as it has been found that the algorithm really does kind of remember and account for variables from similar creatives, and can really be then biased towards your creatives. But don't worry, if this is too much hassle or it's just not an option for you, it's totally fine to use the same account. It's just better hygiene not to. But if you are using the same account, what you need to do is just to make sure that you create a clean campaign that has never used your control creatives, so the winning ones that you're actually spending money on. And then, as I mentioned previously, what you want to do is so-called two-layered testing, as I like to refer to it. So firstly, you will focus on mobile app installs, which will allow you to test much cheaper and quicker and determine some winners and losers. And then you take only the winning creatives into your second stage, where you're already looking at the whole funnel and overall efficiency. Again, optimizing either for events or value, whatever you guys run your regular campaigns on. The following point is all about evaluating accordingly. This is just something that is important to keep in mind. Sometimes you might forget. So of course, depending on different platforms, you might even have different top funnel metrics. Such as, for example, if you were to test a video, a YouTube ad, one of the top funnel metrics you definitely want to consider is a view rate, which is not something you would look at when you're testing on Facebook, right? But another even more important point here is that different channels, more often than not, bring very different quality of users who engage differently with your ad and perhaps have different conversion windows. And this is why it's important to also do your internal benchmarks and make sure that you kind of find out for yourself what is the ideal volume to be able to reach statistical significance and reliable results on each platform where you're testing, if you're testing on more. And so the last but not least of my points is all about connecting the dots. I'm sure all of you know this one. It's an elephant in the room, so to say, perhaps, but it really is crucial that you're able to create a consistent user experience on the whole user acquisition journey, which is perfectly illustrated here by the famous example of Lily's Garden. So you see how they perfectly recreate the look and feel and the emotion the game evokes from the very first impression on the ad, through the App Store, all the way to the app itself. So there are different tricks and tips you can do. For example, what you can notice here, what Lily's Garden does, they always use the house, right? The house is kind of the focal point. And of course, the colors are the same. And this really is important. And just to illustrate how much difference this can make, on the following slide, I have some examples from our friends in the gaming industry who have seen really, really incredible results. As you can see, as much as 33% year-over-year revenue growth, just by making sure that the journey is consistent throughout the whole acquisition funnel. Almost 80% year-over-year increase in organic visibility, which then, of course, in turn resulted in almost 60% year-over-year relative difference between the CPI and the effective CPI, so your blended acquisition cost, basically. Almost 2x the continual increase in store conversion. And to my big surprise, this even affected metrics such as retention on the first and the 7th day. So it's really not something you should take lightly and think about it, especially in the gaming space, but I would say across all verticals, this is really something that's important to be on the lookout, and it's something that has been talked about for a long time now, but most of us, as I've seen so far in the industry, are often neglecting this. And with that being said, I will hand over to Maria.
Yeah, turning my mic back on. So I'm going to cover the golden rules of App Store creatives testing. And I'd like to start with the rule that we usually recommend following. Keep the description A/B testing for later and start with improving your visuals. You see, testing text elements usually brings a very not significant result. However, if your description view rate exceeds 10% and your installs per read more rate exceeds 1%, then, well, it makes sense to A/B test your text elements. This is a common case for financial and business apps, well, because users have to read very attentively what they're downloading. And then the next golden rule is about video elements. So according to our benchmarks, product page visitors watch videos for 10 or 12 seconds, but some app marketers keep developing and testing videos that are 30 seconds long, and our advice is to keep it short. Here's another thing that we frequently recommend. If you've got multiple variations to be tested and you have limited budget or time, try to shortlist your variations down to 2. You see, it's way better to get a significant result in a 2-variation experiment rather than A/B test multiple variations and get no significant results whatsoever. Another rule is related to multivariate A/B testing, where you test different variants of your app icon, name, screenshots with a single experiment. So some think that running an experiment with several app page elements will save them money. In reality, they get confusing results and they have to do regular tests and then spend more money on traffic. So we recommend running multivariate experiments only if you want to rebrand your app or test a new concept. And last but not least, a couple of words on pre-launch A/B tests. So if you want to make the most of such tests, well, I mean, gather not only metrics, but some insights as well, redirect users who tap on Get to a little survey, but make it very little, 2, 3 short yet comprehensive questions will be enough. So in this whole A/B testing process, one of the most essential steps is creating a hypothesis. Definitely you can run an experiment without one, but then you are risking running A/B tests for the sake of running A/B tests. So before testing your creatives, you have to be aware of what you're expecting to learn from this experiment. And that's why we insist on having a solid hypothesis. What would it include? First, the element you're going to change in the new variation, then the predicted result of the change, and the rationale or the why behind the test. So I'll dwell on the last one for starters. This is about the research that you need to do before you form a hypothesis. The thing is, the ideas are out there, you just need to look around. So let's look around together. So firstly, you can study current design trends and industry trends. For example, App Store updates their artwork guidelines, and then they say that they no longer accept realistic guns in their artwork. So obviously, when forming a hypothesis, you will avoid placing realistic guns on your screenshots. Then you should find out best practices for your app category. For example, a red color prompts users to impulse actions, and it might work well for a food delivery app. So if you are optimizing such an app, you can test that theory. You might also want to examine your competitors. For example, you can check their icons. If most of them have blue background, or are using characters that are facing in the same direction, you might want to develop several contrasting variations and test them in order to find the one that will help you stand out. So this approach is actually backed by neuroscience, and it's called visual salience. In a few words, your icon will capture the attention of users, and they will respond to it at a neural level. And this is how your app is going to be chosen among others. You can read more about it in an article on our blog. I think that someone will share a link in the chat. Then to build a hypothesis, you might also want to reconsider your own App Store product page. You can add salient elements that I mentioned before to your icons and screenshots, or you can add a person or a character pointing towards a call to action or an important caption. So once you've found the rationale behind the changes, it's time to formulate the hypothesis. For example, if we add pointing towards the Get button on screenshots, we expect to get twice more taps on Get. Here I'd like to stress out that a strong hypothesis is vital for running a successful A/B test, but it does not guarantee you a winning variation. Still, you'll get a lot of user data accumulated for the hypothesis of follow-up tests. Now let's talk about where to test.
So, yeah, where to test? I guess it's a natural following up question. So we know how to test it more or less, but where to. Sorry, can you mute? Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So annoying when the echo happens. So, most of you did say that you are running your acquisition on Facebook in majority of the cases, which is also the most recommended platform I would normally use to test creatives. It is quite easy to do, but essentially it really comes down to what is your main channel. If your main channel is Snapchat or Google, then of course you normally want to test on Facebook. So rule of thumb number one, you test where you run most of your UA. But speaking of Facebook, for example, let's take that as an example for now. What you want, so we already spoke about, using clean campaign and not using control or not mixing them up in the same campaign with the new testing concepts. But what is even more important here, what I would like to pinpoint is if, for example, in the case of Facebook, what you really want to do is isolate a single placement. Why? Imagine you just do automated placements and you have 5 different concepts and you have no control over where each one is displayed, right? Perhaps they all go to audience network because it's cheaper, but that means that you have no control over the environment and you don't know how the ads are displayed, where, what publishers they are on, which all these variables create very different experiences, which might change your results. So ideally, you want to select feed because you know that this will deliver consistent experience, you know what the feel and look of that is, and can therefore achieve comparable results when you look at what you actually achieved. If you are testing on Google, I would basically follow more or less the same rule, use a clean campaign for testing if available to you, even a separate account. And what I've seen, I would say especially in the gaming space happening a lot nowadays, it's becoming popular to use programmatic for testing. For example, platforms such as Kaizen actually allow you to also select specific publishers so that you can more or less control the environment where the ads are being published and shown. And this, of course, allows you to also achieve cheaper inventory because it will certainly most likely be cheaper than the 2 giants, Facebook or Google. And also it makes sense mostly for the gaming space because in gaming, it's much easier to kind of venture out into ad networks, whereas for example, subscription apps, it's oftentimes difficult to scale on other ad networks compared to the 2 major platforms. And the last point I would like to make here is that, especially for subscription apps, more often than not, you cannot simply replicate, let's say you run both Facebook and Google and you find the winning concept on Facebook, most likely it's not going to work as well on Google. So you will really want to test on both platforms separately. With that being said, I'll again hand over to Maria.
Yeah. Turning the mic back on. So I'd just like to add a few words about ASO as a crucial part of UA strategy. So when done right, it can really boost organic installs tremendously. So I would also recommend App Store A/B testing to optimize your conversion rates and get more installs. Because with the help of A/B testing experiments, you can detect the optimal icons, screenshots, app previews for your App Store product page, and by optimizing your App Store listing, you not only are increasing the number of downloads, you're decreasing your CPI as well, which is great, I think. So let's talk about mistakes to avoid. I'm gonna turn my mic off. Sorry, a second.
All good, perfect. So how not to test? I selected some cherries that I've seen happening in, let's say, non-rookie accounts, but done by quite big successful apps. So again, we'll do a little deep dive into each one of them. The first one being forgetting to look at the top of the funnel. So we already talked today about how important it is to consider the full funnel when you are indeed testing. Next slide, please. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So considering the full funnel KPIs is super important. The most common mistake I've seen companies do is that they basically just straight out jump into testing all concepts on ROAS and putting them into campaigns on app event optimization or value optimization, which of course can work, but actually it costs you a lot of money and a lot of time. If you do the two-layer testing I've mentioned earlier today, where you basically start by optimizing towards installs, and then you select the top few that are winning on KPIs such as click-through rate and scalability overall and engagement rate, whether that's relevancy score or any other metric such as IPM, then you already know that you are not going to be wasting money in the second stage on something that doesn't even get people engaged on the very top of the funnel. So then you already are again saving money by only taking the winning few instead of all into your second stage, where you are already focusing on ROAS and again running the campaign on either event optimization or value. So you can see here I also listed some primary and secondary KPIs to consider. Important note to make here is that, again, you must consider what kind of platform you're testing on. In case you are looking into testing a YouTube ad, one of the primary top funnel KPIs might be a view rate, which is not listed here, but generally you will be fine with this. So the second major mistake, I would say, that I've seen happening is impatience. People are impatient. Of course, we all need to be efficient. That's all what performance marketing is about, and we don't want to waste any of our time or money. But with that being said, I'm hoping you all are aware that there is such a thing as weekly seasonality. For example, in gaming or entertainment or even fitness space, this tends to be that the weekends are super high performing, and then the middle of the week is very, very weak. Whilst maybe for productivity or financial apps, this might be the other way around, right? The weekend is probably not so strong, and then the beginning and middle of week will be very, very good. So that's why it's quite important to make sure that you test over the whole 7 days, just to get consistent and reliable results. That being said, of course, you must use a bit of common sense here, and there is no need to keep spending money on something that, for example, hasn't seen an install after you spend $100 on it. So ideally, you want to exit the learning phase so that you really can be sure that these are more or less the results, optimized results that you will be seeing if you continued using the creative. Moving on to my last point, which is about creating limitations for yourself. So, of course, nobody likes to fail. Unfortunately, the truth with creative testing is that maybe 1 out of 100 or 1 out of 50 becomes the super big success. So the trick here is not really trying to avoid losing at all costs, but embracing losing and doing it really quickly and learning from it as well and taking the learnings forward with you. So the trick of creative testing is actually losing, but doing it fast and taking the learnings forward with you, because if you keep trying to kind of recreate something that you know has worked in the past, this will only create failure, because people will already know it, feel it, and they become blind to the concept. It's oversaturated. So make sure you always work on fresh things and move forward quickly. And Maria will now cover the last mistake.
Yeah. Sorry. Oh, I'm back. Okay. So I am going to talk about another mistake that is using the wrong tools. So you all heard of Google experiments and creative sets in Apple Search Ads, and those are great tools. They have their advantages, but I would like to say a few words about their limitations and about times when you shouldn't go with these tools. So let's take a closer look at Google experiments. It's a prominent A/B testing tool. It's free and enables testing with paid and organic traffic. However, there is a challenge. At some point, it just becomes insufficient for your conversion rate growth. So let's talk about this times and limitations. So A/B test results via Google Play experiments differ from the ones from paid traffic sources. Then there's lack of data on user behavior. No data on average time spent on variation page, screenshots scroll through, etc. There are only 5 A/B testing experiments at a time, and you can test only app page visuals. There are no tests on search and category pages, and you cannot compare the performance of your app to your competitors. There are no pre-launch tests, and obviously you can not test your iOS version. So let's talk about creative sets. This is indeed a great way to empower Apple Search Ads, yet there are certain limitations when it comes to A/B testing. So test results are only applicable to Apple Search Ads where user behavior is quite specific. For example, the average banner tap-through rate is twice lower compared to the results of genuine top position in App Store search. 7.11% against 19.29%, so there's a huge difference. These tests results can't be applied to app product pages because they don't allow you to experiment with crucial product page elements like app icon, name, promo text, etc. You can use only screenshots and app previews from your product page with a limit up to 10 images and also in a fixed order. Creative sets are also bound to keywords, which makes results interpretation quite tricky. And it's impossible to tell which screenshot app preview combination outperforms others. Then it's hard to measure the statistical significance of creative sets testing, and the sample size is calculated manually. And also lack of user behavior insights, and also the number of tests you can run at a time is limited by the number of existing creative sets, and it's time consuming because to change a concept you need to update the product page. Also, it's impossible to run pre-launch tests, which is a bummer. So what tools should you use? Well, I would strongly recommend to use professional A/B testing platforms like SplitMetrics, for example. Because here you get a great variety of A/B tests, unlimited number of experiments for both iOS and Android, 3 testing environments, product search and category pages, then behavioral analytics, advanced segmentation that allows to track the difference in conversion by gender, age, and more, competitive intelligence, integrations with tracking tools so that you see the whole funnel, and well, guidance by SEO experts. So let's talk about how to win without a winner. It's like a common case when people who are doing A/B testing expect to find a variation with better conversion right away. But from our experience, getting a winner on the very first A/B test is highly unlikely. You see, it's a continuous process. Moreover, we've seen many clients who are getting into a curious psychological trap. You see, when they don't get a winner, they may be biased towards the new variation just because they invested like time and resources into the design. But the new design is not necessarily better. So to exclude this psychological trap, we suggest referring to the stats gathered throughout an A/B test. No winner tests don't give you the winning variation, but they give you a lot of information and insights. And these are valuable insights for new hypotheses and further A/B testing experiments. So I'm not going to show you the whole workflow of interpreting metrics because it's going to take forever, but I'll give you a few examples. So let's say you are running an A/B test with two identical variations that differ in screenshot number 2. In such cases, we look into direct installs. So SplitMetrics, for example, tracks a direct install when user taps get without any page interaction. So here's what the experiment stats show. You can see it on the slide. And you can see that more direct installs happened upon viewing variation B than A. So it might be that screenshot number 2, the only element that differs across the variations, was so good at converting into get. But keep in mind that in such cases, one screenshot of the first view screenshots can result in such an improvement if the difference between the two concepts is prominent. So this seminar platform is actually very cool, as only by looking at these bars you can understand what to optimize next. For example, if there are more direct installs than installs per screenshot scroll overall, then page visitors tend to install your app without scrolling screenshots. Therefore, it makes sense to focus on optimizing the first two screenshots. In the opposite situation, you have to focus on the entire screenshots gallery. Then installs per read more. Normally, this metric doesn't exceed 1%. If it's above the benchmark, you have to think of A/B testing your description as well. In the screenshot tab of our platform, actually, there are even more stats related to visuals. In the following example, clients A/B tested two screenshot galleries that differed in the first screenshot only. So look at the installs after viewing screenshot data. If compared across the two variations, the metrics are pretty close for screenshot 2 and 3. It's 10 versus 11 and 28 versus 26. But obviously, screenshot 3 in both variations perform better than screenshots 2. So this is where you get your optimization insight. You might want to swap screenshots 2 and 3 and run another A/B test. These are only a few examples of what you can get with no winner A/B tests. And naturally, this particular analysis won't necessarily be relevant to your app, but it gives you the idea of how much value there is hidden in those no winner A/B tests. So far we've talked about why, how, and where to do A/B tests, and it's high time to talk about the current realities that impact A/B testing in ASO, iOS 14 and IDFA deprecation. So let's begin with iOS 14. It was released in the middle of September, and its adoption rate is about 56% now, according to Mixpanel, and it keeps growing. So this new OS brought some features that might impact ASO and A/B testing. So what's new? First of all, Apple added app collections above the App Store search. They have a get button and are horizontally scrollable. This means users might choose to discover apps through this section instead of scrolling down through the organic results. So the update might result in the conversion decrease for some apps, though it still remains unclear how to make it into this section. Then another improvement is automated typo correction in App Store search. So now misspelled search terms will automatically be corrected and show search results for the corrected spelling. Well, now you won't be able to rank for this less competitive misspellings added to the keyword field. Apple also updated the product page details. iOS 14 users see a usual horizontal with new elements now. The developer name, language, and size. These additional elements, and especially the app size, may influence the decision to tap on Get, but the impact of the conversion rate is not likely to be huge, as users have to do the extra scrolling. So last but not least are app clips, this new way to discover apps. So they offer instant access to the app's functionality without installing it, and after grabbing the idea of the app, user might either install it or, well, not. So on the one hand, this is a great opportunity to showcase your app, engage users, and prompt them to download it. Though on the other hand, there's a risk that users might not download it, like they will use the app clips instead, because app clips are faster and lighter. Though, again, it's only a prediction because the impact of app clips is yet to be discovered. As for the IDFA deprecation, which you all heard of by now, obviously, even though it has been postponed by Apple till early 2021, there's a lot to discuss already. So a quick recap: the new app tracking transparency framework will require that app publishers explicitly ask users to allow their advertising data to be tracked through IDFA by showing a pop-up message. So this change is bound to affect UA and app monetization, as the identifiers used for attribution, analytics, retargeting, and creating lookalike audiences. And IDFA helps to identify the audience that is most likely to be converted from ad banner click to your App Store page and then to a download. So with no IDFA, it will be hard to target this specific and most valuable audience segments. And due to this limited targeting, we are likely to face higher acquisition costs. Let's take Facebook, for example. There you are charged for ads impressions, and the more banner clicks and app installs you get, the lower your CPI is. Naturally, if ad banners are shown to a wider audience, you're going to get fewer installs, so your CPI will increase. So in this context, conversion optimization through creatives testing is getting really important, because optimized banners and product pages will help you decrease CPI. You see, banners optimized for a specific audience will attract that audience, while the rest will just ignore your ad. Then you increase your chances of attracting the needed users to App Store, and if your App Store creatives are properly optimized too, the audience will be more likely to click to tap Get. So more installs and lower CPI. So A/B test your App Store page creatives and your UI creatives and banners, and then you might survive this post-IDFA world. Let's move on to collaboration between UI and creative teams. Just a second, I'm going to turn my mic off. Yep. Sorry.
Thank you. Awesome. So yeah, really, A/B test your everything always. And to wrap today's sessions up, I have a few recommendations for you on how you can improve collaboration between the UA and creative teams and make sure that it's as effective and efficient as it can be, and everybody is happy. So from the quite a few years I've been running and leading UA teams inside mobile startups and cooperating, of course, very closely with creative teams, I found these few things really helpful in ensuring that the process is as smooth as possible and everybody's motivated and happy. So first of all, it's really important that you appoint one main responsible person on each team, if you have more than one, of course, provided. And this ensures that there is not going to be any confusion. Responsibilities are basically clear. At least these two people who are the appointed responsible people should meet on a weekly basis, once a week. Of course, the rest of the team members can also join, but it is really important that at least once a week, at least the two main people do meet to kind of recap on what is being tested, what the results are, and how the teams should move forward in terms of new creatives production. It's really important for the UA team to take the time, even though it might seem annoying, and of course it's extra, to actually review the data, analyze it, and make conclusions that can then be translated maybe in a more lay language to the creative team, so that both teams can together make conclusions and maybe create new hypotheses and find other ways forward. For, again, the UA team, it's also important to check in on the production process early on in the process. There is nothing more frustrating and disappointing than, you know, meeting 1 week later to review the assets that were created based on the meeting last week and find out that what actually is being delivered is not at all what you expected or had in mind. So it will save everybody a lot of frustration and time if the teams keep this sort of agile collaboration and open communication also in between the weekly meetings, to make sure that the process is as smooth as possible and everybody's happy with the results in the end. And then always take time to kind of sit down and review together the learnings you've gathered, whether it's on a monthly or quarterly basis, and to make sure that you really are not forgetting the learnings you've already accumulated on the way, and that you are utilizing these on your way forward. On the next slide, there is a little illustration I made of this process, where you can also see how it basically loops, and it's really kind of a fluid process, right, that keeps like one thing feeds into the other. Don't worry, we will share the slides afterwards. There will also be a recording, so you don't have to draw this. But basically, yes, creative concept is the first. You create hypotheses, which is really important, as we discussed today. This is up to the both teams to do together. Then once the creative teams has actually delivered the creatives, UA, of course, is responsible for testing, analyzing, delivering results, translating, so to say, for the creative team. And then the two can, again, sit together to arrive at conclusions and make the decision to either iterate in case there has been a successful concept found, or just move on to completely new hypothesis and concepts. And the loop begins again. So that's all to collaboration. And just as a closing remark, I would like to say that at AppAgent, we are actually hiring and looking to for mobile marketing lead to join us. So if you're looking for a new challenge, please do head over to careers.appagent.co and apply. It would be awesome to welcome you to the team. And now we can, I guess, move to the key insights and Q&A.
Yep. Let's see the questions we have received during the webinar. Opening that file. Yep. Okay, let's see what we have here. Do you see the questions, Lucia?
Right. Okay. So I see. Okay, I can start. So I see. Sorry, I think. Maybe I take one. Yeah, awesome, cool. So I see William was asking, do you have a minimum daily budget that you would need to reach statistical significance? Giving an example would be more clear. Well, this is highly individual, and it really depends on what your objective is, and also where you're running it. So let's say you are looking at mobile app installs campaign or optimization. So what you know is what you need is a minimum of 300 installs to reach sufficient statistical significance. Now, this of course depends on, are you running on Android? Are you running on iOS? Is it in tier 1 countries like US, for example, or is it in India? So these are all variables that will basically change completely what kind of budget you need. So that's something that you have to calculate based on this kind of information. So it can vary from anywhere between $20 a day for the weekly test up to, I don't know, I guess 100, let's say, a day, if you're looking for tier 1 iOS countries. So again, really individual and something you will need to calculate for yourself.
Okay, I see a question about SplitMetrics. Are there any limitation for A/B tests on SplitMetrics for iOS apps? No, not really. So yeah, no limitations. You can test your all the like in three environments, and you can test any elements that you want, and there are unlimited number of experiments. Will you share the slides? Yes, we'll share the slides. Do you want to take next one?
Sure, I can. Yes, so I see Dogukan has asked how many total ad sets do you recommend for testing on Facebook. So again, this comes down to how many concepts do you have. If you have 5, you need 5 ad sets. If you have 10, you need 10 ad sets. If you want to, test them simultaneously, which is normally what you would like to do again, to make sure that you have consistent results, that you have the same kind of seasonality, weekly seasonality going on. So I would not recommend more than 20. Of course, Facebook always is pushing nowadays to the less the better, minimize as much as you can. But really, since you will be using, so in case we are talking about the mobile app install objective, and you will be forcing equal budget by using the ad set budget option instead of the campaign budget optimization, you don't really have a limit per se to how many ad sets you can run, right? So again, this comes down to how many different creatives are you testing against each other. And then for the second layer of testing, when you move into the event optimization or value optimization, you're fine using just a single ad set. Well, again, this depends how many creatives you have, but I doubt you will find more than, let's say, 5 winning concepts. Again, depend, or individual ads, depending on how many you're testing against each other. So these you can then use in a single ad set against each other. Hope that answers your question. You want to take the next one, or I can also, I see Johan. Oops, okay. Yeah, okay, I can take that. Was asking how do you analyze the significance, and do you have a specific tool? Personally, I'm not aware of like a tool per se, although, for example, built-in features like the A/B testing tool in Facebook platform does, of course, calculate the statistical significance for you. For example, on Google Play, the store also shows you, it calculates the significance for you, and it lets you know once you have reached the statistical significance. That being said, I know I did not recommend using Facebook's built-in tool and rather running manual tests, which means, so I normally check this with data analyst. As mentioned, for mobile app installs, I know that as long as I'm on around 300 and above, I can make confident conclusions. But again, the amounts will vary on what you're optimizing towards and what your whole basically conversion funnel looks like. And yeah, statistical significance is all about making sure that the results of the different ads you're testing overlap as little as possible. Is the, I guess, shortest, best way I can describe it now.
Well, I don't really see any more. Have we answered all, or?
I'm not sure. Will you share the slide?
Yeah, obviously. How accurate are ad intelligence tools, or is it only estimates? Well, I guess it depends on the tool. I can only speak for example, SplitMetrics. It is very accurate because there are specific formulas built into it, so it's not. It kind of eliminates the human factor where you can make a mistake while just manually calculating like statistical significance or choosing the winning variation based on some metrics. The system chooses it for you. Okay, so I think we should wrap up We kind of took a bit more time than we expected with all those technical difficulties for which I apologize, guys. I hope you enjoyed our webinar, and no, if you have any more questions, we're going to send you all a follow-up, and you can will send us those questions as a reply to our follow-up. Thanks, everybody, and thanks, Lucia. It was a complicated but great experience.
Yeah, you too, and thank you everyone for sticking around. Hopefully you found some valuable insights here with us today.
Okay. Well, I'm ending the broadcast. Thanks, everybody, and bye. Have a nice day.
Bye.